What is up, Facebook land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kubler. And before I introduce my very special guest, Tony Watley, I'm going to first dedicate a show. I dedicate a show every week. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm going to dedicate to until it hits me. And today I put a video out this morning about my hometown, Pottstown. Last night I went to a community roundtable discussion with people from the community and business and politicians and the churches, trying to figure out how to save Pottstown. Pottstown is a small town outside of Philadelphia, an urban town with urban problems, underfunded schools, low property values, high taxes, a business district that's not there, although they are making a push to try to change that. And I met with a lot of people that I grew up with and people that I respect. And it was enlightening and encouraging to be around people that care so much about Pottstown. So tonight I'm dedicating the show to everybody that is going to get on the train towards helping Pottstown become what it was before and what it can be in the future. Because Pottstown is worth it. And I want to see my hometown thrive. And I want to see the people there take pride in their community. And I want to see the schools become more competitive and the kids that are growing up on the streets get off the streets and have a place that they can go to where they can be safe and learn and be mentored. So that's kind of a passion of mine and a passion of my friend David Charles and Howard Brown, who are going to be the ones spearheading this. And I'm just going to be a support mechanism for them. But tonight, show is dedicated to Pottstown and anybody who's going to get on the train to help fix it. So that's my dedication. The podcast, you can obviously find it anywhere, audio-wise, on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Anchor, you name it, you can find it. You can go to my website, mattkubler.com, see all the episodes, past and present on there. You can go to my YouTube channel, and then anywhere on Facebook, you can find it as well. I try to keep as many different platforms moving at the same time so that people can get a chance to watch and listen however they feel is best for them. So now let me introduce Tony real quick. Tony is, I did a show a couple weeks ago. I think my episode should be airing in a week or two. And he's just a really chill, laid back host. And I think he's going to be a really chill, laid back guest, but he is a driven human being. His podcast is called 365 Driven. His website is 365driven.com. He is a serial entrepreneur, a best-selling author, side hustle millionaire. Is that the name?
That's right.
He is a business consultant. He's a mentor and coach to many, many people. And he's an all-around good dude from down in the Houston area in Texas. So without further ado, my man, Tony Watley.
Hey, Matt, thanks for the warm welcome and the nice words. I enjoyed having you on the show. You delivered some great value. I know the audience is going to be finding some great information in our episode when that airs in a couple of weeks, but just wanted to thank you for having me on here and looking forward to engaging with your audience and maybe sharing some value and maybe really just getting them off their A to really start getting started doing something in their lives.
Well, I think it's going to be fun. I think we're going to, as with every show, I have no plan. I ask one question, and we're going to start with that question. Who is Tony Watley?
I am a product of two hardworking blue-collar parents. I grew up in a small town, Friendswood, Texas, which is about 40 minutes south of Houston. And when I grew up there was about 20,000 people in the population. We had two-lane roads going in and out of the town to the nearest expressway is probably 10, 15 minutes away. So pretty isolated. I would say that the town overall was upper middle class. We happened to be in the lower middle class type demographic. Really, the neighborhood I grew up in was one step above the only trailer park in the town. We had the older homes, the smaller homes, 1,000 square foot type thing. So didn't grow up with any money. Parents were very hardworking. My dad was, a Marine veteran. He served in the Vietnam War, and he was a combat veteran. He came back. He met my mom in Japan, so I'm actually half Japanese. My mom, she served her entire career as a cafeteria lady in the school system there. So serving lunches to children. She was very empathetic, very warm and welcome, and just never had any enemies. She was always saw the good in people. My dad, very disciplinarian, as you can imagine, a gunny sergeant in the Marines, and just just a hard worker. And that's how they taught me that life is not fair. They taught me that if I ever wanted to achieve anything, that I was just going to have to put the work in and do the work and do something. And I will tell you that they never talked me out of my dreams, things that I want to accomplish. I had the entrepreneurial spirit even as a child. So I was the kid that you hear the cliche of selling candy. I'd go buy a box of candy at the corner store and resell it at the school, and basically triple my money on those regards. And then that led to pushing the mower and knocking doors and mowing yards and washing cars and whatever I could to earn money, because if I wanted that skateboard, if I wanted that bicycle, I had to get off my ass and go do it. And that was the thing that I learned, was the value of hard work. And for a long time, that's just how it went. And when I graduated high school, my dad said, "Hey, you want to go to college?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to go to college." He's like, "Well, get a job or join the military." So obviously there was no college fund for me. So I sucked it up, and I've got a full-time job working in the chemical refineries as a pipe fitter helper, grinding pipe, digging ditches, doing epoxy coatings, hanging insulation, all these things in that hot Texas sun. And after about 3 or 4 years of that, I realized I'd rather be sitting in the air conditioning with the engineers who are making the 6-figure salaries. So I basically paid for my own engineering degree at the University of Houston. And that took me about 7 years. I went to school at night. I was working full time. And even on the weekends during that era, I was still waiting tables, which eventually also led to managing restaurants on the weekend. So I was just 24/7 hustling. Like, people talk about working full time and going to school and working on weekends. And that was me. I was working 3 jobs to get through that. It was actually not a very fun time in my life. I hear people talking about their college experience and, partying and socializing and things like. It just didn't happen, man. I didn't, University of Houston was like the national championships back when I was there. And I didn't even get to go to any of those games because I was so busy. So that gives you an idea. I did not enjoy college. It was expensive. I was broke, and I was overworked, sleep deprived, stressed out, had actually more gray hair back in college, like, truthfully, than I do now. And I don't use any dyes. So it's not about that. I was just very stressed out and underslept. So that led to, when I first graduated, it was 1998, I graduated. And for the first time, I had a, quote, normal job. I had an engineering job, probably making $40,000 at the time, average money for that job. But I was getting home at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening, and I found, man, I had so much time on my hands. It's like, what do I do with all this time? And while most people in their 20s were wasting that in the bars, chasing tail, doing stupid things, I said, I'm so used to hustling that I need to do something. So I actually picked up part-time jobs. So I was the engineer graduate that had a full-time career that would still go wait tables on the weeknights and the weekends to make extra money. So you can kind of see how I'm driven like that. Now, that's what happened is I said, this is taking too much of my time. Maybe I can create a company to be able to scale my income versus trading my hours for dollars. And I started my first company in the year 2001. After really coming out of a really long, about a 1.5 year long depression cycle, because that engineering job I had ended because of an industry downturn in the oil industry. And it left me unemployed for about 6 months because nobody was hiring. I was living off of a couple of credit cards that I had, really maxing those out. I was with a girl that I was not in love with, and I had a child and had a newborn son, and I was very stressed out about all these things. And here I was working 3 odd jobs trying to pay bills. Just felt like I was really out of control in my life and really had no time. Like, if I thought I was stressed out in college, I was really stressed out in this, because I really blocked it out, a lot of the things that went on in that time. Looking back, I was definitely in a depression. I just didn't know it at the time. I really blocked out the details. I don't have a lot of vivid imaginations, because every single day felt like I was just in a rut. Every single day I dreaded getting up. Every single day driving to my first job, my second job, the weekend job, just really thinking, is this really what my life has become? Like, I worked so hard to get to the degree, to get the career, to end up in this pit of despair. And I just felt like I was at the bottom of that pit. And I'm trying to illustrate that because amidst all that stuff that was going on, I started my first company, and I ended up, severing that relationship, going our separate ways. That worked out perfectly, but it was a moment of action. It was a moment of decision that I just could not live in that moment. And honestly, my business that I started was in 2001 was like the shining light for me to focus on. The only thing good that was going on in my life was to build this company. And eventually that grew into a multiple 7-figure company, which we had a nice multiple exit about 6 years after we started that. So that history became the basis of Side Hustle Millionaire. It was actually a business that we built that was only taking about an hour of our day to work on, and we generated millions of dollars in profit from it.
Well, let's first. There's many different questions I have coming out of that. Uh, First of all, I appreciate your drive. So I was like the opposite. Well, I wouldn't say I was the opposite. I was just a different kind of entrepreneur when I was younger. Yeah, you were mowing lawns and selling candy. First of all, if we ever had to sell candy bars for like a school fundraiser, I would eat the candy bars and then pay for them because I didn't like selling. I didn't like going to people and selling. I just felt, but I wrote term papers for people for money, for lots of money. I sold weed. So I had a nice, that I could sell. That I didn't have any problem with because I felt there was definitely a reason why people wanted to buy it. So I was a different kind of entrepreneur, but I wasn't necessarily a hard worker. Everything came easy to me. And it wasn't until I went in the military that I kind of figured out that hard work exists and that I can't just get by on being a goofball who had a good personality. Wasn't working for me anymore. So I truly appreciate the work ethic that you had going in. And I think when you can always scale back, but you can't, I think it's hard to teach a work ethic. You have to have that and know that it's there if you ever need to turn that gear on again. But I think being able to scale back like you did was first of all, you realize that you're in a shitty spot mentally and emotionally. So let's talk about that business that you started. What was the 1 hour a day business? I mean, I own a 1 hour a week gym where people lift 1 day a week in 1 hour. So I'm intrigued by the 1 hour a day of time that you're putting in to make millions of dollars. What was that?
So it was an online performance car community called ls1tech.com. And we launched it for about $350, which was the cost of the software licenses. It was a forum community. And we built the really the viewership, the audience by doing giveaways every week, trying to give away gift certificates, built up a large community. It became the largest of its type, actually. And when we sold it, there was about 160,000 registered and active members. The site was so busy that we actually had 100,000 unique visitors per day. So it was almost like a middle-sized city walking through the front door of that business. We attracted a lot of eyeballs, a lot of ad revenue. We had over 150 advertising accounts. I had a team of 75 to 80 people who were freelancing and volunteering to be part of that community. And they would get the hookups on the parts and the sponsorships for their own cars. Because you always have to have a way to give back to the community to make it worthwhile for them to participate. People love being part of a community. I love building communities, but also love being part of other communities. That's a human relationship thing that we're all looking for. We're always seeking a community. And if you could build something that's going to be large, that's going to be something that can scale to be something crazy. But we didn't do it for the money. We started that. I had one partner, John, in Chicago. We really just wanted to provide a value with people to hang out with online. We wanted to talk about cars, Camaros, Firebirds, Cadillacs, Trans Ams, the General Motors performance community. We really just wanted to have a stable place where we could always hang out. It would always be reliable. It would be there, wouldn't delete our content. We were good curators for everything that was produced because it was user-generated content. And we just basically wanted a place to hang out. And we said, hey, man, if we can make our car payment on this website, that would be pretty cool. And that happened in the first month, and it kind of grew and grew, and it just kept growing. So at the end of the day, we're making about $400,000 a year profit from something that really took no time because we were able to scale enough revenue to start paying people to do some of the more technical tasks.
Now, was this a membership where the users would have a membership fee to be part of the forum, or were you only solely generating ad revenue to support the business side of it?
Purely on ad revenue. So we even had General Motors advertising on the website. So all the Goliaths of the performance car industry, we had Chevrolet, Cadillac, Pontiac, we had all the Discount Tire, all these big name manufacturers were because basically that was the era when the magazine started to decline because the forum traffic, a magazine circulation back then, they may send out 100,000 issues per month and they were selling a half page ad for $5,000. Well, we had 100,000 people per day and we were charging like $350. So you can imagine the ROI was completely different off the scale. And that's really what everybody started coming to forums.
That's a brilliant, and whether it was by design or not, it ended up becoming a very brilliant alternative to the magazine. I can't remember the last time I've read an actual handheld magazine. because everything I look at now is on ESPN or, Sports Illustrated I used to get all the time, but then I realized I wasn't looking at them anymore. I was just, other than the swimsuit edition, but who doesn't? But I wasn't looking at the magazine anymore because I could just pull that same story on the internet, on my phone when I'm on my own time, So I just think as the technology advances and as the ways that people consume information changed, did you know that you were getting in on that when you did it, or was it more by, holy crap, I think we're onto something?
We knew it was headed and trending that way, and it actually started to the forum started to have way more traffic than all the major magazines, and it got to be where our brand name started being considered equal in all the media outlets. So anytime General Motors was doing an unveil of a new engine or a new car, they invited us and gave us full media and press passes to go do that alongside with these big magazine names like Motor Trend and Car and Driver and Hot Rod Magazine, these big names. There we are next to them. But even the magazine started to try to use some of our branding to help them out. So they had me writing different articles. I used to be published photojournalist in all these car magazines, and they would introduce me as Tony from LS1 Tech. So they started to leverage some of our branding in our audience to be able to share their ads onto our platform. And it's kind of never returned. I mean, the magazines have really largely gone away. And I think the forum and social media is really to blame for that. And I don't want to say that was on purpose, but it's just the change of times. That's the way things happen. Everybody right now is on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Guarantee in 5 more years, something else will be along. And it's just always going to be this change, ebb and flow. Be prepared for that change. And the magazines really weren't. They had opportunities to create those forums themselves and capitalize it, but they were too egotistical, thinking that, hey, we're the king magazines. We don't have to go do the forum stuff.
Yeah, they probably thought that was the weird guy in their basement doing the forum. Not to say you're the weird guy in the basement, but that's probably, and I'll be honest with you, I probably would have thought the same thing. I'm a podcast host that doesn't listen to podcasts that much. Mm-hmm. and I was a guest on a lot of podcasts because I was trying to figure out whether or not podcasting was a way for me to get my name out there and to share other people's stories and that kind of thing. But I'm not a technology-driven guy. I obviously have my iPhone, but I don't use it for its capacity. I have like 3 things I do on my phone, and one's Facebook, one's Instagram, and one's make a phone call. Well, 4 and text. So I'm just not that guy. And I think if somebody would have said to me that whatever the new thing is coming out or the trend is leaving one thing and going to another, I don't know if I would catch on to that. I don't know if I'd be open enough or brave enough or courageous enough to go, I'll give it a try. $350 is what all it costs you to turn something into multiple 7-figure exit strategy. So mm-hmm. I just think that, to me, I didn't know that story. So I like when, we have a lot of people on here that have inspirational stories that have overcome illnesses or deaths or tragedies or last week was Misty Lane, and, for Christ's sake, she was a crack addict. Mm-hmm. And, but I love for $350, I made multiple millions of dollars story too. I think that's
while working a full-time job. So it's
right.
It's definitely a possibility. And I just really wanted to open it up because I'll tell you, when I started to want to share the story, because I've helped people build 7- and 8-figure companies in my inner circle. And it was always just something, I've always been helpful. I've always tried to help people just level up, think bigger. And I started to see a lot of results over the last 15 years. And they started telling me like, Tony, you should be doing this full time. But here I was like working a multiple 6-figure engineering corporate, middle management role at Fortune 10 companies, basically had dream jobs that most people like really fight to get a hold of. And I think, who am I to walk away from someone's dream job to go do something that I enjoy? And I, you heard me talk about the struggle of paying for that college degree. It was really hard for me to walk away from that because I felt like if I didn't use that degree, somehow I wasted that money or that education that I got. So here we are talking about the sunk cost fallacy, things like that. And I started to read more books and I was like, man, I'm just making a bunch of excuses. I'm doing things I'm not enjoying, and I'm getting paid well enough to just really put up with what I'm putting up with. So, I was working international projects. I would get the call in the middle of the night and they'd tell me to go get on a helicopter or airplane the next day and fly on the other side of the world to go fix a problem. So it got really old after doing that for 25 years, feeling like I was just basically a disposable Kleenex for these companies based on my skill set. And whenever there was a downturn or the project was over, they're like, hey, we're done with you. And you go sit on the bench and wait for the next game to start. So that got kind of get old after 4 or 5 times of that in my career. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to take my matters in my own hand. I hate my employment being somebody else's decision. I was making more in my side businesses, and I still have. I still have 2 other companies, and I started up 365 Driven as well. These are all things that don't take very much of my time. They're all online businesses. I'm big on drop shipping, things like that. The wheel business I have is Deviate Motoring. It brings in almost $800,000 of revenue per year, and I spend about 15 minutes a day working on that. So people are sitting around listening to this. They're thinking like, how do they trade their hours for dollars? I'm always trying to bust that mindset to get people away from trading their time for money. That works when you're trying to get started, but when you build online businesses, things that can scale, you no longer have a connection between time and money. I can earn money when I'm sleeping. I can earn money while I'm at the gym. I can earn money while I'm talking to you right now. I could probably log in and see some sales have hit. So understand it has nothing to do with your time if you build the right business model, and it's completely possible nowadays.
And as a guy that doesn't have much time, because I am the guy, but I wish I could say I was hours for dollars, because it's more hours for free and serving, and my world is a little bit different in that I've never been a professional with a college degree working in a professional job. I'm not your typical business owner. I'm more of a get shit done guy. I don't care. I don't want to see a P&L because they bore the piss out of me. I don't want to see a spreadsheet. I don't care about the bottom lines. I'm just not. It's not what I'm interested in business. What I'm interested in business is how do I deploy it, make it work, and have the plan, the physical plan come together. I wish I had the passion for the business side, because it just doesn't. It completely bores the shit out of me.
Yeah.
and it's hard when you're a business owner to have. Luckily, I have a business partner that really likes money, and so he's the guy that does that. I'm just not that guy, and I don't think, even if God, I'm out to God's ears, that I somehow make it big with Max Outer as a speaker or podcaster or whatever. And I have plenty of money. I don't know that if I'm not ever going to work 70 hours a week or 80 hours a week. I just don't know if I won't. I just think that's just the way I'm wired. And I think some people are just wired that way. And, but I do appreciate the ability and the wherewithal and the mental acuity it takes to do what you do, which is to create ways to make money with minimal amount of time spent doing it. I wish I had that, because my life would be a whole lot easier. But I appreciate that. Now, let's go back a little bit in time. When you were a kid and you were an entrepreneur, were you always thinking about how do I make the most money in the least amount of time, or did you enjoy the grind?
I saw the grind as a necessity to get to a goal that I perhaps had, but I never say I enjoyed it. No kid enjoys pushing a lawnmower when they see other kids ride by on their bicycles and laugh at them. Nobody enjoys flipping burgers at McDonald's in high school and trying to hide behind the counter so your classmates didn't see you in a stupid paper hat and a name tag. Yeah. Nobody enjoys grinding pipe in the sun or digging a ditch and just feeling blistered from the sun and coming home with dirt and grinding dust up your nose every day. Like, no, I always saw that as a necessary evil, because I was not where I wanted to be. And these are the dues I had to pay to get there. And that was really my only option. So I've never been big on excuses, and I still hold a lot of people very accountable for no excuses. There's too many people walking around on this earth thinking that their problems are other people's problems, and that their situation is based on what other people have done or said or put them in. But the fact is people need to be fully accountable for their situation. So when you have these hardships about, I don't have enough education, or I'm not fit enough, or I'm not doing enough, like, these are things that you control. And most people like to just complain. They like to bitch about their boss. They like to bitch about how low they're paid, but they don't do anything about it, because complaining is very easy. And they're hanging out with a bunch of other sheep that are aspiring to be average. And they're just going, hey, we're all average. That's cool. Like we're all average. Like there's us and there's them. Whenever you hear that kind of crap, you need to start reevaluating who your circle is and understand, is this circle really being constructive? Is this circle really helping me reach some goals or dreams that I have? Because the answer is usually no. So you start to seek for the better people that are out there trying to get you to level up and challenge you and hold you accountable, and not letting you use the excuses to keep you from doing those things.
Yeah, that was perfect. I agree 100% with everything you said. I think one of the biggest challenges, especially, and I think a lot of it has to do with where your lot in life is, where you're, how you were raised, how you grew up, what your family's dynamic was, what the work ethic was like in your family, what examples were set for you, whether you had a mentor that was showing you the way, or you were lost and had to figure it out on your own. I think a lot of people come from different starting points, but I think ultimately the thing that everybody can do, and I don't think there's a limiting factor to that. I think everybody can improve and everybody can get better and everybody can dream and aspire within reason. Obviously, when I mentor kids, I talk a lot about understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Like, what are you really good at? What do you really suck at? And what are the things that you can improve? You know, I don't think anybody should work on things they suck at, because they'll just become marginally less sucky. Like, there's not an upside. The ROI of that is low. If you have an opportunity to avoid doing shit you suck at, avoid it. And if you're good at something, can you become great? And if you're great at something, can you become the best? And I think when people actually sit down and look at what their strengths are, and then they pair it up with where they're actually putting their time and energy and effort, a lot of times it's not anywhere even close to matching. And I think that's where the change and the improvement can happen.
I would agree on most of that, what you said. I think that we focus too much on our weak points when you should be reinforcing your skills and your knowledge. But the one caveat to that is if there's something that you really have a lot of passion for that you're just not good at yet, have you really committed yourself to really go in all in and learning the things and practicing and getting the reps to do that, to become that better version of that? Because, for an example, public speaking was one of the weaknesses that I had. But I knew that I wanted to do that. I knew that I had the capability to do that, but I just did not have the training or practice or the mindset to do that. So I invested in doing public speaking lessons. I took lessons with Toastmasters. I got a coach, practiced, read a lot of books on it, just kept practicing, make videos every single week, things like we're doing right now with live videos, interviewing people, just getting more comfortable with it. Eventually led to competing on a stage in front of hundreds of people in a public speaking contest, which I started winning those as well. So that kind of shows you that everything that you want to do that's important to you, you can create as a skill. And I'm an introvert. I like to keep to myself. I like to work on my doing things by myself, but I learned to operate as an extrovert when it's required, because I started to realize that being an introvert, being shy, hiding in the background, trying to fit into the herd, there's no rewards for people like that at all. Opportunity, happiness, fulfillment come to people who are willing to step out of that crowd and do things that are extraordinary and be outstanding. So that's a choice you have to make. So there's a lot of people listening that are probably going to be watching this that think like, oh, I'm an introvert, I'm too shy to do that. Well, that's a bunch of BS. It's a self-limiting belief that you have to get over and realize that you're just really missing out on untold fortunes and untold happiness because you're telling yourself you're an introvert or you're too shy.
Yeah, my background's in human behavior and body language, and I work with DISC profiles and values index and attribute indexes a lot. And there's a lot of people that don't really know who they are or what their personality types or where their best, where they put value in their life. And I see a lot of people in DISC, at least the Intermetrics one that I use, which Jay Niblick, who was on the show, is one of my best friends, owns that company. When you're dealing in your profile, so if you're a D in the DISC, you're a dominant personality. It's more of the influencer, the person that doesn't mind being out in the crowd and being out front. There's the natural, and then there's the adaptive. And a lot of times people have a high adaptive in an area. So they may be a lower level D or a lower level I, but a high adaptive D and a high adaptive I, which shows that when people are watching or when it's required, they can adapt into that environment. But the problem is if they stay in that environment for too long, it actually becomes a stressor in their life because they're actually not in their natural state. And I think everybody, if you haven't done a DISC profile, they're revealing in the fact that it allows you to at least see a picture of the science behind who you are. Where, are you a economically driven person? Are you a person who looks at the altruism side of things? Are you individualistic or political? Like, there's a lot of things you can look at that tells a lot about who you are. And you can see where, oh yeah, I do stress a lot when I'm at a party and I got to be, my wife takes me to this party. I don't want to go talk to anybody, but I have to, and I have to be Mr. On. But I get stressed after a while, and you can see why that happens. So on that level, I think there's so much more people could learn about themselves. And when you have that knowledge, you kind of know where you need to work on things. You know where working on things may not actually produce the end result you're looking for. But ultimately, I think knowledge is power. The more you know about yourself, the better. And the more you know about other people, the more when you're talking with somebody, the more when you read another person's body language and their mannerisms, how you're able to pick up on that and then adapt yourself into their environments. And I think in business, that's gigantic.
I could share a story of when I finally realized at age 40 that not everybody wanted to be a leader. So here I was, I turned 40 and I just got a staff job at a major oil company, one of the top 5 companies in the world. And it's very prestigious to get in there as a staff person. You always hear that they only hire the best of the best, highest grade people, high achievers. And for the most part, that is true from every company I've worked in as a contractor prior to that. And so first month I was there, they had a new hires orientation, and they all invited us to the very top floor of one of the towers where the CEO and all these executives sit, and they have their own, room to lecture. And we got to meet the CEO, and they did, like you said, a personality profile, really quick stuff, just in the crowds, just assessing, kind of showing people where we're coming from. So they said, what are the top 3 reasons that you joined this company? And they gave maybe 10 ideas on a bullet point on a slideshow. And they went through those one by one. And, one of them was leadership. That was the reason I was there. I was there for leadership opportunities. I was chasing the executive path. But I figured, in a room full of high achievers, I'm doing the air quotes for people that are listening to this, but that there would be more people that were driven equally like me. And so they're reading off these things in. I'll tell you that most people join the company for job stability, which, you and I both know is a fallacy now, but that was why they joined. They wanted job security. As a big, but well-known company. Some people joined for the prestige of saying they worked for the company. Some of them liked the pay. They paid a little bit better than some of the suppliers and contractors. That's fine. And then, people kept raising their hands, and pretty good turnout. And then they got to the one said, who's here primary for the leadership opportunities? And there was about 60 people in this room, and 3 of us raised our hands.
Wow.
And we're all looking at each other. And I was shocked in that very moment. It was like a wake up. Like, you'd mean I'm in a room full of high achievers, best grades in the universities, most prestigious roles in the companies that they came from. And they're worried about job security over their leadership opportunities at a company like this. And it really was a shocker to me, because I expected half the room at least to be raising their hand in that question.
Well, I think I've worked, I own a manufacturing company, and we have patents, and I work with engineers, and I've known most engineers not to be naturally born to be leaders. They're just, their personality profile does not lend itself towards being a generalized leader, I should say, within the specific field of engineering amongst other engineers. If so, in the DISC profile, the C, an engineer is going to have a very high C and a very high S, because they like things to be consistent and precise and data driven and minutia driven, and the finer points have to be met. And that's why they're engineers. But people with a high C can also be similar to somebody who has a high D in a general world. But the high C is only a high C and a leader and a person of dominance within their sect, right? So people that are similar to them. So I can see how that probably was a fact. I'm not surprised by the number of people that raised their hand. But we've never met you and I physically. I've never been in a room with you. We've had about an hour and 30 minutes worth of conversation in our life. But I could tell that you have probably a higher DI than your average engineer. Like if you took a disc profile, I bet your D would be above 50%, and your C would be probably 60, and your S would be about 60, and your D is about 50, and your I is about 40. So I mean, you're an upper level on the more traditional dominant personality than you are in the engineering world, which is why you're probably a better entrepreneur
Mm-hmm.
than you ever were an engineer.
Absolutely.
Because you have the ability to be a risk taker.
No doubt. I kind of got away from the engineering as the actual profession, and I moved into project management so I could actually be a leader and start managing people and money, which two things I had interest in. The pure reason I joined engineering, I was average in math. I struggled in college math. It was tough to get through that. I mean, I basically had to take every math under the sun to get the engineering degree, and it was not easy for me. But anything that had practicality or leadership or planning or financial or any kind of things like that, or even design, I enjoy that. I'm a very creative person. So I'm very artistic. I've always been the drawing type, drew cars, drew battle tanks, drew World War II airplane, built model cars. I'm a very creative person. I've built over 150 websites for different companies. So I have the analytical degree that I struggled to get. I'm not going to lie. It was tough, but I've always been the more creative side. So I'd say I'm a very good balance of analytical and emotional. And that's probably, like you're saying, that's why it's describing is a little bit different. But I'll tell you that people in project management with engineering degrees tend to be the people that are more personable, more leadership personalities. And that was actually a factor when we would interview people to go into either engineering or project engineering, is because of their leadership capabilities and their personalities. Because we do have the analytical type that like to sit in their desk and focus on a design thing or do hard math. And we need those people definitely for a lot of these companies. But I can't send that kind of person out on a boat to go handle the guys in their 30s and 40s who have a gruff attitude and report to these young engineers. They have to have the right personality profile for me to be able to hire those people and send them out there and trust they can do the job.
Yeah, and that, I just sort of went on a tangent, but hey, that's what the show is. There's no plan. So I think I have a passion for understanding how the human mind works. I have a passion for understanding personality profiles, understanding why people do what they do or don't do what they do. So we could talk about this for hours, but I want to talk about a little bit about, because we have about 20 minutes left. I want to talk a little bit about your family situation, your kids, where does family play a role in your life? Because I know I'm very public about, I'm invested in my children every day. My wife is a saint. She puts up with me, which is not easy. What is your role? What is your where do you place family in the importance level in your life?
I would say that my parents weren't very affectionate. And that it's also, I would say that even my wife's parents were not very affectionate. They had so many kids. They had 7 kids in her family. So both of us kind of didn't really feel like we were clingy on things. We're both independent. We both work at home. She's in the next room in her own office, and we just kind of do things and work. And we're a great couple. We've been together since 2005, married. So it works. But I'd say that I was a weekend dad. My son grew up with his mother about 30 miles from here. So I was a weekend dad until they become teenagers, and then they don't want to hang out with dad so much because they got other things to do, the independence phase. And my son is 19 now, but we're very close now. It's just, it took a long time for him to kind of realize that there was definitely some polarization differences between his mother and I. And he's gotten a good balance of both of us to understand like who's doing what and why we do things and what makes us tick. So I would say that in my offshore oil and gas career, international projects, I had very little time. I missed a lot of birthdays. I missed a lot of events. I sacrificed for that money to go do things because I was, there's a lot of things I just wanted to accomplish. And that's the way you make it to the CEO trail, is to do those, pay those dues, go work at an Africa project. So I was checking all the boxes to climb the corporate ladder. And I did that very well, navigated it extremely well, but that came with a lot of sacrifices. I was gone months at a time for work overseas. My wife, luckily being her independent self, she's able to adapt to that. And she kind of likes to be alone a lot of times too. So it kind of worked out, but it was tough early in the relationship. But now we both work at home. It's been a few years now, and we enjoy traveling the world and doing things that we're making up for time that we didn't get to spend in our last 15 years. So I would say that business has always taken a precedence for me over family, only because I didn't have my child growing up here. I mean, I always made time for him to do things on the weekends and see him whenever I could, but largely I just didn't have him around every day. When I came home from work, I didn't have my son. And that really bothered me for several years. And I finally kind of grew numb to it because I just couldn't change the situation. So why sweat the details and try to beat yourself up over it when you don't have control over that? So to me, I really started focusing on things I could control. And that was applying myself, getting better, trying to be the best example for him when I'm with him, leading by example, creating more income for him that he could have more things that he wanted. So I would say that, to be honest, I would say that the businesses and the independence actually reigned a little bit over family.
And I kind of assumed that just based on the conversation, because it hadn't been brought up.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of just assumed that was the case. And there's not a right or wrong answer to this, but there's obviously connection. He's your son, and obviously your wife's your wife. But now that your son's 19 and you have a little bit more of an adult relationship with him,
mm-hmm.
is there because my dad left when I was 9 months old, and my dad wasn't even a weekend dad. My dad was I'll come and get you and then never show dad. So I didn't have that. And that was a big problem in my life. It caused a lot of problems in emotionally for me as a kid. I had a stepdad who came into the picture when I was 12, and, he was a disciplinarian. He became a pastor. So it was a big religious component. And then we butted heads constantly. So I wanted, but I didn't have the traditional relationship with a father. Have you had that conversation with your son? As your son said, Dad, I wished that you were home more, but now that you're not, let's try to find a way to make up for that time and spend more time together. I'm just curious, how does that dynamic work?
I think that he never felt that I was gone. I mean, the fact that he was living, I only saw him like maybe one day a week, let's be honest, when he started getting older. And even then, sometimes he had other things to do. So there might be a period of a month I wouldn't see him because I can't force a kid to come hang out with me. Kids have their own things to do. They got parties and their own friends, and hanging out with your parents. Let's be honest. I grew up with my parents and I didn't want to hang out with them either, so it kind of goes in those teenage years, but I didn't beat myself up with it. I just try to do things the right way and the best I could and provide for him. And I always made time for him. I mean, for one season, I was like coaching his little league football, and I would drive an hour away each direction to go do that, like, twice a week. And it's just kind of like, I always try to make efforts, always try to do things I could, but I wish he would have grown up with me. He lived with me for about a year, and he didn't like that we had rules. So he went back to the path of least resistance to move somewhere with no rules and be able to get away with things. He realized actually when he turned 18, we were driving somewhere, and he's like, Dad, he goes, I realize now that if I would have grown up with you, my life would have been completely different. And I think I would have turned out better. And he started to realize this as he got older, because he still comes and visits over here, but he was going and meeting some of the friends he had used to hang around with when he lived here when he was like 15. So not too long ago, but he made, he was in the school system here for a solid year, and he met some friends in the neighborhood. And whenever he comes back, he goes and hangs out with them. And he started to see the disparity between the friends he had at his mother's house and my house, and understands that there's a difference in people. And he's like, the kids in this neighborhood are just a lot better. I guess I realize that now. And they're actually talking about their dreams and things that they're going to do. And they're going to college, or they started a job. One of them joined the military. They're actually taking action with their lives. When he goes back to his home and he talks to their friends, they're just worried about smoking weed and playing video games and working, in the kiosks in the mall, and just really low level thinking. So he's starting to see the difference. And it was really, it touched me that he finally said that to me, because that wasn't a prompted response.
I think that's, it's amazing. My birthday was on Saturday, and I try to I learned early on in life that I was never going to be my father. Mm-hmm. And that when I had a chance to be a kid, I was going to be an example setter. I was going to be, my kids needed to know what hard work looked like. My kids needed to know what loyalty looked like, what dedication looked like, what commitment looked like, what service looked like, what love looked like. And I needed to make sure they saw that every single day, mm-hmm. consistently. And you don't always know what your kids are thinking or what they think about you. I don't sit down and have deep thoughts with my kids all the time. My son's buried in YouTube videos sometimes, and my daughter's in college. And so you don't always know. And my son wrote in my card, you will never know how much you truly mean to me. And he's an emotional kid. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and I do too. But that means I translated that in my own mind, at least to me, that's him saying, I watch you.
Yeah.
And I think what your son was telling you was that he watched you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's cool.
Yeah, his friends actually found me on Instagram and they were like, hey, your dad has more followers than you. So it's kind of funny. But he watches what I do, and he's definitely inspired what I do. And he's read my book, and I suggest other books to him to really help him. And he's like, that was a great book, Dad. And so he definitely is a sponge of knowledge, and very bright kid. And he's going to be doing some amazing things when he figures out exactly what he wants. I've never been the pressure type dad. You and I were about the same age. I'm 46, and I remember when we were young that everybody told you if you didn't go to college, you'd be a failure. You'd be a garbage man. You'd be working in the plants your whole life. And I get that. That's like a scare tactic. But it was all about back then, like the prestige, especially the parents of our generation. When they say, like, my kid is in school. And still there's a lot of people out there that send their kids off to school just for the prestige of themselves. I don't agree with that. I think that school, honestly, is a waste for 90% of the degrees out there. I think people should be using that money to maybe start their first company or buy their first house or find some kind of a trade skill that you're going to learn a lot more value from that. And it just, to me, it's like you can work 25 years in corporate and maybe hope to make $200,000, or you can start a business and be making that in 2 to 3 years. It's really your choice. And nowadays with the online, the ability to reach thousands of people for free. I mean, we're going to have these podcasts, your episode, my episode, they're going to literally reach thousands of people at really no cost. So
Right.
The potential there to build your businesses, build your brands, to scale things out has never been, it's unprecedented. It's where we're at the prime of that time right now. We didn't have this in 2001 when I started my first company. It was a lot harder. We had to cold call people. We had to send a lot of cold emails asking for people to come work and advertise and stuff like that. Nowadays, we have a big broadcasting megaphone. I mean, the ability to go live on Facebook and broadcast to thousands of people for free. I mean, that's ridiculous. I don't think it's going to be free forever, by the way. I think at some point, Facebook's going to say, oh, you push live, how many people do you want to reach? And they're going to have a different price tag for the range. It's going to happen. They control the medium of communication. They're going to start to monetize that, just like everything they do. But just don't think about it as college. If you're listening to this and you're a college age, or your parent and your kids are approaching college, do not pressure them to do the college thing unless they're going to go buy the tool, which is a useful degree that's going to create them a life of income. Because to me, those would be the STEM degrees, to be honest, like science, technology, engineering, math. 9 of the top 10 highest paying bachelor's degrees are STEM degrees. And that's for a reason: supply and demand. There's not as many engineers, so they got to pay people more to go do that. Get a degree that
I think I agree with that. I didn't go to college. I had an appointment to the Coast Guard Academy and enlisted in the Army. Why not? And it was because I knew me. I knew that the Coast Guard Academy was 100% math and science, and my 2 weakest subjects were math and science. I was good enough to fake it, but not good enough to make it, and I knew that. So instead of challenging myself, which I probably could have done it had I had enough confidence in my ability to go outside of my comfort zone then. But like I said, I didn't have to work for anything growing up. It just sort of came to me. I have a photographic memory. I can memorize and dump it and forget it. And so that's the way it was for me. So my daughter's going to be a teacher. You can't be a teacher without a degree. So got to go to college. You want to be a doctor, you got to go to college. You want to be a lawyer, you got to go to college. There's certain things you've got to go to college for. I didn't need to go to college to be a cop. But today, and it's one of the banes of my existence, is that most departments are requiring a minimum of 2 years education to be a cop, which is the most asinine thing. And this is a whole nother topic, but that's the most asinine approach to a profession that I've ever seen, because it takes away the person who truly should be the cop is the person who wants it the most, the person who lived in the community they want to work in, the person who's maybe smoked a joint in his life, got into a fight, had his nose broken, seen a little bit of the other side of the fence, not the person who went to college and said, I'm either going to be an FBI agent, a police officer, go work in private security. Like they had 5, 7, 10 different things they could do, and they chose cop because that was the thing that was easiest to get right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where law enforcement is today. So that's a whole nother show. But I do believe
that, by the way.
What's that?
I agree with you on that. By the way, I don't think it should be college should not be mandatory for those roles.
It's mind numbing to me. But I think that when I mentor kids, I get the parents to buy in, and I explain to them that I'm not going to necessarily tell your child the same thing that you're going to tell your child. But before I tell your child, I'm going to talk to you about it. Like if there's a life-changing, I have some kids I mentor that are looking to change schools in high school. And one may stay, one may go. It's a brother and sister. And we talked about it. Like, what are the pros and cons? Why do you want to go to this school versus staying at this school? Like, we had the conversation, and then we have a conversation with mom, and I say, this is where my advice is going to come from this angle. Are you okay with that? And it's important that kids know that they have choices, that they think through logically the pros and cons of those choices, and pick a path based on who they are today, in hopes that when they're going through that process of me going in the military, I want Army intelligence. I thought when I got out of the Army, I was going to college. That was my plan. When I got out of the Army, I realized I was 22 years old, almost 23. I had served in a war. I'd been in 20 different countries, and there was no way on God's green earth that I was going to go back to college with a bunch of 18-year-olds who didn't understand anything. Like, I would never be able to assimilate into that environment. So I said, all right, I'm going to go become a cop now, which is what I wanted to do since I was 6, but I wanted to have a college degree to fall back on. Well, I never went to college. I still have never gone to college, and I will never go to college because I don't need to go to college. It doesn't define me.
Exactly. Some of the most successful people I know dropped out of high school. So I'm not a big fan of telling people that they need to go to college to feel successful. I mean, I've earned more from my businesses than I have from my engineering degree, although both did well. I think that getting the right degree is worth it. I don't believe in coming out with some liberal arts degree with a 6-figure debt to get a job that pays $30,000. You can make more as a waiter. I just don't think that's a smart economic move. And there's a lot of people out there still doing it. It's unfortunate. When we start hearing people bitching about, what is it? They say the college loans are the worst thing that's impacting our country. We need to do something about it. Yeah, don't go to school and spend $100,000 on some bullshit degree that doesn't get you a job. That's what you do about it, because I had to pay for it myself. So I really don't have a lot of sympathy for these whiny people that have gotten college loans to get a degree that's not going to get them a job. They chose that job. They chose that degree. It's up to them to understand that when they're going in. And honestly, it needs to be the parents that need to kind of have that tough conversation before they start writing that approval for that loan. Like, hey, do you know this job's not going to pay when you get out? Are you sure you want to be $100,000 in debt? Let me paint the picture of what your life's going to be like for the next 20 years because you agreed to get this degree that can't get a job. So it's really up to the parents. The kids are too young to understand that, but they're still ultimately responsible for making that decision.
Yeah, it's I had Mary Zoila Vega on my show a couple weeks ago, and she's in the business of helping kids get scholarships, athletic scholarships, academic scholarships, picking the right school for them if they're going to go to college, and helping them decrease their debt load. And this year in 2019, she'll have generated 20 million tips for kids that hire her, families that hire her. So that if you do decide college is what you want to do, well, there's so much money out there for kids to get that you don't even know exists, and it's too hard to find. So therefore, you don't try, and you just take on that $100,000 in debt when your $100,000 could be $40,000 if you go out and do the right thing. So there's an answer to every problem. I've learned that in my life. You just have to be patient and have the wherewithal to ask the right questions with the right people. But man, it's been an amazing show. I think you brought so much information, some information that was personal, some information that was business, an awesome success story, how you took $350 and turned it into multi-million-dollar business. I think it's a different show than we've had on here in a while. And I think it's a show that I think everybody's going to resonate with because you're a real dude who came from nowhere and turned it into something. And I think that's always inspiring, regardless of what the pathway was to get to the success. It's the journey of that story that makes people go, man, if he can do that, I need to get off my ass and start doing something. I've had this idea in my head that I've always wanted to try, but I never did it because I was too scared to do it. And I think if there are more people out there like you that are sharing their story of how they made that decision and the time it took, it wasn't like you were 22, graduated college, and I'm just going to do this, and you became this multimillionaire. You did 25 years of time in a profession and having all these side jobs until you decided I'm done doing that. And I think people that are in that spot now, I'm 48, so a lot of the people watching the show are my age or older, and some of them are like, man, I never really did the thing that I dreamt of doing, and I don't think it's too late for anybody.
I would agree with that. I think nowadays, and especially on the online businesses, you can actually, a lifetime of a business nowadays can be 5 to 7 years if you build it right and sell it. It's just, that's the way things escalate now. There's no brick and mortar job that you got to ride and show up 8 hours a day for 20 years to be able to make something out of it. Things can get scaled very quickly nowadays if you build the right business model and you really put in the work. I would say that first 1 year to 2 years, yeah, you're going to be putting in some serious hours to build any brand, even a personal brand. If you want to be a speaker or a coach or all these different things, it's going to take some effort. That's inevitable. There's no get rich quick. There's no get rich easy. There's only get rich doing work. So understand that if you're willing to put the commitment in, it may only be a few more years. Like there's a lot of people out there complaining about their situation, and 10 years from now, they're going to be in the exact same situation complaining about it. But if they would just take that action today and put in a little bit more extra work, they're going to buy back a lot of free time later on to be able to do things that they enjoy. So the companies I run now, I'm able to travel the world. I'm able to do things, race cars all over the place. I can operate my businesses from the back of a cruise ship in Spain if I want to. So understand that I don't have to show up posted hours anywhere. I can work when I want, where I want. And those are the ultimate freedoms because now I'm able to enjoy the lifestyle that I want instead of worrying about just showing up anywhere, anytime.
Well, that's great advice. I think it's a great way to end the show. How can people find you? What is the best way for them to reach out to you in order to learn more about what you got going on?
I'll keep it simple. It's all on my website. It's 365driven.com. So 365driven.com. You'll find links to my best-selling book, my podcast, and my coaching services if you guys are still looking to start that first company of your own.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony, for being on the show, brother. It was an honor to have you on. I enjoyed the hour. It flew by. And I'm sure that we're going to be collaborating down the road at some point in time.
Absolutely, Matt. Thank you for having me on.
Everybody, you've listened to another episode of the 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kubler. Thank you to my special guest, Tony Whatley. Everybody, go out, live your dreams. If you have a dream, go take action. If you need help, ask somebody. There's always somebody who's an expert in helping you achieve what it is you're trying to achieve. I've had a mentor my entire life. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be who I am today. So find somebody that you trust that understands what it is you're trying to accomplish and allow them to guide you as a mentor so that you can actually achieve the goals that you've always wanted to achieve. And you know what? Go out and be kind to everybody today. Tomorrow, be your very best and make sure that you make someone else's day their very best as well. God bless. Take care, everybody.